Okay, how to make a clay skull. First of all, I'm going to start off with a model to follow, and I'm going to really examine my model and look at the negative spaces. I need to observe where it's most narrow, which would be right here, and where it's widest, which is in the back of the head. I also notice that it's more narrow at the top than it is at the back. The top front is more narrow than the top back. And I also notice that it all curves under around the entire thing, even a little bit up here. I'm also going to notice how it fits on my board. And if I put the chin right up to the corner here, then I can see that on the sides I have triangles on the sides, smaller triangle in the back, and the same size triangle on the other side. I take my clay, and clearly my proportions aren't correct right now, so I need to move some things around, and I'm going to work general to specific. That's very important that you work general to specific. So when it's in this state right now, it would be ridiculous to try to get any details. The eyes would be ridiculous to do right now. I have both my clay and my original on the same size boards. That way I can measure from the board up. I want to be careful not to measure from the table up on one or the other, and then if I measure from the table up here and then I go on top of the board, I'm not going to have the correct proportions. So I'm going to put that right up next to there, and I'm going to make a little note, little line, just to show me how high that needs to be. I'll chop the top of this off with my fettling knife. I've got two tools here. This is a fettling knife and this is a carving tool. Okay. Alright, now I'm going to use my fingers. You can use calipers or your fingers or whatever you've got handy to measure that, and that seems about right there. Seems too high at the top, so I'm going to chop off some of that in the back. You want to keep turning your piece so that you're looking at all different angles. So I've got, looks like the top is just about right. Still pretty much an angle. Alright, now I'm going to cut away some of the edges here, round this off through here. And then the front of my chin comes all the way to the edge. From here, this is my highest point. So I'm going to bring my fingers down and measure, just kind of bring that straight down, try to measure that. So right about here, this is about my highest point. So now I'm going to add some more clay in the front. Now, whenever you're adding two pieces of clay together, you need to score and slip unless your clay is extremely plastic. And ours is very plastic right now. I'm going to go ahead and take some of these edges off here. Put my chin on the bottom. Try not to get any air pockets in there as I'm working. Still not the angle that I'm looking for. So I'm going to hold up my tool and I'm going to try to mechanically move my arm at the shoulder, not at the wrist and not at the elbow. And I bring it over, and looks like I need to maybe bring some of this off and then fill in here. Smooth that around and blend that in. Okay, now I'm going to turn my skull forwards and look at him from the front here a little bit. And I'm going to try to get it symmetrical. And already you're starting to see the basic form of the skull. Okay, now the backs are way more curved than I've got them. So I'm going to turn it here. And it also protrudes out more in the back here. So I'm going to take some of the extra clay that I started with. I'm going to round out the back of his head. I'm going to smooth in those two pieces really well because I'm not scoring and slipping, so I really have to make sure that I'm putting those two pieces together really well. And it's even wider than that. I can see when I'm standing above it that as I look down, that skull is wider there than I have mine. So I'm going to add some more clay to the back here. smooth that in as I go. Still looking a little bit square. Try to round him off here so that it's wider in the back at the top than it is in the front. Now I got a little bit of a flat head. Let me look down here. I'm going to lower my angle down here at eye level, and I can see that right here, from this vantage point, I can see that this is too low right here, and this is too far back, probably just a little bit too far back. So I need to add some more at the top. Okay, starting to get the profile. Double check my profile. I need more down here at the bottom. And I'm going to make the top symmetrical. Symmetrical means same on both sides. Synonym for symmetrical is formal, and that's talking about balance. Okay. Now I'm going to look at the side. My proportions seem pretty good. Let's smooth this in. Move some of this back up there. Okay. Alright, now let me try to get some of the more prominent features. Now I've got my basic form. Now I can get some of my more detailed features in here. And I'm going to measure from the block of wood down to the top of the eye, right about there. And I'm going to go ahead and press in my eyes. Right about here, right about there. Draw a little line. This is where my cheekbones are going to go. And I'm going to start to pull out some of that right there. Okay, now let's turn it sideways and look at the nose. The nose is higher than the bridge of the eyes. The bridge of the tip of the nose, which is actually the bridge of our nose, is a little bit higher. So I'm going to add a little piece right here for the nose. Smooth that in. I don't want any piece to be too thin on the edges, so I need to keep an eye on that. Now I'm going to lower my vantage point and look down a little bit lower so I can really get a good perspective on that. And I can see that this dips in here. So I'm going to go ahead and take out some of this through there. And then kind of squeeze the clay a little bit to get my ridges in through here. I could have just as easily pushed that clay to the sides, because now I'm finding that I actually do need just a little bit right there. Now, the cheekbones is a very defining feature. The cheekbones, I'm going to measure the bottom of my eyes where those cheekbones begin, and it's right about there. And I'm also noticing that this part of the eye is further up than this part of the eye, so I need to bring this back, that eye socket back a little bit. And I could do that by adding or subtracting clay, depending on where and what I need there. Okay. I'm going to add a little bit on my cheekbone here. I'm going to add a little bit right here underneath the eye socket. Smooth that in. And then this is a very distinct line right through there. And this is a flat plane that's on the diagonal. It's not parallel to the front. It's actually a diagonal. So I'm going to press that out so it's flat right through here. And then I'm going to bring my line down here to pronounce that cheekbone. Okay. Now, looking out from the side, I can see that I've got a negative space right here, and then the cheekbone comes back. I'm going to measure about how far that cheekbone comes back, right about there. And I'm going to draw a line, measuring as I go. Draw a line where that goes. And then I'm going to take out some of this negative space right here. Okay. Take out some of the space below this cheekbone that comes back. And this is all lower. There's more detail through here, but it's all lower than this cheekbone. So I want to define that cheekbone really well. And then I can come in and add some more of those details. Okay, let's turn it forwards now. Okay, starting to really look a little bit more like a skull. Okay, I'm going to measure my width here. Might have that a little bit too narrow. Now notice from the profile how this piece comes out. This is further out than the nose. So I want to look at that and see, do I have that? Probably need to add a little bit more clay right there to make that protrude out. Okay, turn it forwards again. I'm going to bring this negative space out. Smooth that in. We won't get to the teeth until one of the last things is the teeth. I'm going to go ahead and make this cheekbone a little bit more distinct over here. Carving that out. Okay. Now let's get some of this detail on the sides. Okay, down here I see this angle right here in this big negative space. So I'm going to measure from the front to that spot right there. That's about where that starts to angle off. And then there's where it ends. I'm going to measure the height to make sure that I don't get it too tall or too short. And then I'm going to carve that out. Now this piece here comes around this curve, so I'm going to take this tool and just smooth this out a little bit through there so it doesn't go abruptly down. And I feel like I need a little bit more clay here. That needs to come out just a little bit. Now if it doesn't look exactly like your neighbor's, that's okay, because these are all handmade and they're all going to look a little bit different. Okay, now this jaw has a negative space right here too. There's a triangle right there. And then this comes back a little bit further than this jawbone does here. So I'm going to define that. Okay. Now I'm just going to smooth everything out and make sure that everything looks proportionally correct. Okay, and then I'm going to come to the other side. You can work simultaneously. You can do a little bit on one side and then go to the other side. For the purpose of the demo, I wanted to make sure that you saw how clearly I got this side. Smooth it all out. Okay, the eyes can be really expressive, and you can play with that as you go. You can play with whether you want them to be really wide or whether you want them to come down in the middle. If you want them to look scary, they're going to go down a little bit like that. But I do want my eyes to be symmetrical. And you can take some liberties, but bottom line, this project has to be realistic looking. I guess that's all you get for right now. Okay, so our proportion is looking pretty good, pretty accurate. Let's get some attention to the back now. Remember, you got to keep turning your piece, looking at it. And I'm pretty ragged back here pretty bumpy, and it's smooth here. There are some cracks, but we're not going to do those first because we have to start general to specific. And smooth that around so that I create a round form here. It needs to dip in a little bit at the bottom. Flatten out or round out any flat spots. Okay, this seems a little bit more round here. I'm going to round that out. Sharpen this up a little bit. And again, our clay is really plastic right now. It's very wet, easy to push around, but not so easy to carve in details. So that's another reason we want to wait for our details. You always want to make sure you work general to specific so that you get the overall feel of it first, the gesture of it, and then you come back and add your details. Okay, so I'm pretty smooth and back. I am noticing that the front is still more narrow than I have it, so I'm going to hold my fingers here and measure. It needs to come in quite a bit. I didn't really notice that until I turned it all the way around. So I'm going to measure here the top with my fingers and just press my fingers in so that I make a little mark. That's where it needs to curve around. Bring that in. And I've already got the mark on this side, so I can just turn him and get some of that clay out of there. I switched carving tools. This one is a little bit smaller, a little bit less effective for large areas. The other one was better. Let's get the detail on this side. Okay, I'm going to measure. And again, I'm not going to measure with the tool that's round because then I could always have a different measurement there. This is just more accurate, easier. Okay, I'm going to measure here from my cheekbone, which is right about there. And then double check that from the height. So yes, that's about right. So this area all needs to come out. Use my finger because it's actually easier than this thing. This is good for areas where you need a nice clean line. Make sure the eye is lower here than it is here, and then kind of smooth that in a little bit. And then remember, this plane is parallel to the face, not parallel, diagonal, I guess, to the face. It's not flat with the face here. It's not parallel with the front of the face. It's actually at a diagonal here. So I feel like I need a little bit more clay there. Push that in. Smooth that in. And now I'll go ahead and put this negative space here. Measure, mark it. Measure the depth there. Okay. And I need a little bit more depth right here. It's very plastic. I can just add that on. That's why you want to make sure that you put your bag on tightly, because if you don't, you're going to come in and your clay is going to be leather hard before you are ready. There will be a day where I say, okay, we're not covering these up at all. Leave your name showing. We want to do that so that they do get leather hard so we can start adding some of those really cool details. Okie dokie. Okay. I'm going to measure this length here from the bottom back of the jaw to the chin. And I can't actually lay my tool up there perfectly, so I'm going to close one eye so I see my perspective well. And mark it. And then here, to get parallel to it. Sharing that skull, you guys are going to have to be in each other's space. You're going to need to be close to that skull. That skull needs to be next to you all the time. You have to constantly be referring back to it. There are some people who are really incredible artists who can just, from memory, make an incredible likeness of something. But until you've done it a few times, you have to look at that skull. And I still look at a reference. I am not one of those people who can just look or just do it from memory. That's pretty rare in the art world. Some artists can't even draw at all, or sculpt for that matter. Okay. Just want to constantly be checking that. Oh, and now I'm looking at the lip here, and I'm noticing that it comes up just a little bit more right there at that nostril, and then it protrudes out a little bit more too. Okay. Get my undercut here, because this does not go straight down. There's a little bit of a shadow at the bottom, and that's going to add to the realistic value of your piece. That's really important, that undercut. Right through there. And my negative space, I've got a triangle in here. Now, if you do something you're like, okay, that doesn't look right, measure it. Don't call me over to your table. You measure it, and you measure it again. That's the only way you're going to learn how to sculpt. Trial and error, and clay is extremely forgiving for that. Okay. I'm going to work on some of the more detailed areas. Get a little bit more clay in through here and through the mouth. And I'm going to try to make these a little bit more symmetrical, these two sides. And there's a little line right above here. That's about as detailed as I want to get right now. Okay, he's really narrow through here and he needs to be wider. I took off just a little bit too much earlier. Really distinct jawbones there. Okay, turn back to the side. You have to keep turning it, so you're going to have to work with your neighbor to make sure that they are ready to turn. But this can also be a good exercise for you if you don't turn it very often. If your neighbor says, I'm ready to turn, and you're not ready to turn, then you need to get ready to turn. Okay, we're just about at the point that we're going to leave it overnight sitting out so that it gets leather hard. Then we can start adding the really cool details. Still going to go over it a couple more times before I let it dry. I want to make sure I've got all my large areas done. Above all, measure. Measure with your fingers, measure with your tools, measure with the calipers. You need to share those calipers. There are 5 pair right now. You need to make sure you are sharing those calipers. It's a little too plastic to do a really good smoothing job on right now. Kind of need for it to set up a little bit more before I can do that. So as you're making your skull, don't forget, I want you to think of a story for your skull. Where was your skull born? What century? Who was this person or animal, if you're doing an animal skull? Who were they? What did they do? Why were they significant? If you're doing an animal, you're going to have to be more creative with this. You have to create a character. Who, what, where, and when? Who were they? What did they do? And when did they live? How old were they when they died? Was it of natural causes? Was it an accident? Who was this? So notice that we haven't done teeth yet. We're going to wait for it to get leather hard before we do that.
That's what you sound like. Honest. Please cooperate and do your part in keeping this theater quiet so everyone, including you, can enjoy it. Remember, lots of adults and kids, too, paid admission to enjoy the show. We must insist on absolute quiet.
Okay, now we've got our basic form made. You've got the proportions correct here on the eyes and the nose. We haven't done the teeth yet. We have the negative spaces here, here, and here. Our next step is we need to set it out, let it get leather hard, and then we're going to carve it out. This one is already leather hard, and I prefer actually to put it on my lap, lay my plastic bag on my lap, or a paint shirt, and then I can set it on my lap so it doesn't get flat. I'm going to go ahead and show you here, but that's what I would recommend, is that you put it on your lap. Now, we need to carve this out, because if we don't carve it out, I cannot fire it. The reason I can't fire a solid piece of clay is because a solid piece of clay is going to have air trapped in it. Air in clay is going to have moisture in it. When we put that into the kiln, if there is moisture stuck in there, the moisture will expand and it will find a way out. I will not fire anything that is not properly done, because it will go boom. It will explode and it will destroy anything around it. So first thing I did is I drew a line around the outside, and I need to follow my rule of thumb. My rule of thumb is no thicker than my thumb, no thinner than my pinky. So this gives me a very good gauge on that. Then I'm going to start carving this out. Start by going around the outside edge